Alright, hello everybody, Friendly Red here, ready to peruse through some very exciting news. The 2025 Halo World Championships have begun, and as part of the opening of the festivities, Halo Studios announced their latest project, and the next release for the Halo series, that being Halo Campaign Evolved, a full-on, from-the-ground-up remake of the original Halo Combat Evolved from 2001. For this news peruse, I wanted to go over what exactly this remake is, as well as touch on some details that you may have missed or not known about if you only watched the videos released as part of the announcement, as there's some interesting tidbits I've gathered via various store page listings and news articles published regarding the announcement. With that out of the way, let's get into some Halo-centric news perusing, shall we? Starting off with a general overview of what exactly this remake is, Halo Campaign Evolved features the entire original story campaign from the legendary Xbox launch title, with fully redone visuals powered by Unreal Engine 5, remastered audio, and re-recorded voice lines from the, quote, core principal cast, with Steve Downes returning as Master Chief and Jen Taylor returning as Cortana. From what I've gathered, we're still unsure as to who else is or isn't returning, but I would suspect that Sergeant Johnson's original voice actor, David Scully, will return to re-record his lines, and perhaps even 343 Guilty Spark's voice actor, Tim Dadabo, will return as well. Speaking of Sergeant Johnson though, this remake will feature some new content focused on both him and Master Chief, as in addition to the full original suite of levels, there'll be 3 wholly new missions to play through, serving as a bit of a prequel / setup to the events that occur in the main campaign. We sadly didn't see or hear much about these new missions as part of the unveil, but regardless, it's an exciting prospect, and I'm never going to say no to new Halo campaign missions, especially when said missions heavily feature Sergeant Johnson. And while not on the same level as brand new missions, there are some other notable changes and additions added in this remake, like the introduction of sprinting, an expanded arsenal of weapons, with 9 additional ones from across the series being added in, and the ability to hijack enemy vehicles, which also includes the addition of being able to pilot the Covenant Wraith tank for the first time ever in the original game. The ever-trusty Warthog also sees a bit of a change for the remake, as it now has an additional seat located on the rear of the vehicle, meaning you can now drive around with up to 4 passengers in just one singular hog. Quite impressive indeed, and appreciated greatly, as this remake will support up to 4-player co-op, with crossplay enabled across all platforms the remake will be on, which includes the Xbox Series consoles and PC, and, for the first time ever, PlayStation consoles with the PS5 and PS5 Pro. It's pretty wild to see franchises that are so engraved into my mind as Xbox exclusives appear on PlayStation, but I'm certainly not complaining, as the more people who get to play stuff like Gears of War, Forza Horizon, and now Halo, the better. No doubts about it. I think that should serve as a pretty concise overview of what exactly this remake is on the surface, so now I want to focus in on some more specific details, both ones that were included in the roundtable reveal video on the Halo YouTube channel, and ones that I gathered from other sources. We'll start with that roundtable reveal video, because there's really only 2 pieces of information I feel are worth mentioning from it, outside of the more general overview and Q&A style info that we've already covered. Firstly, there's the skulls for Campaign Evolved. These aren't entirely new to the original Halo game, as skulls were featured in the 2011 remaster, Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary. If you don't know what skulls are in the context of Halo, they're essentially unlockable gameplay modifiers that can change up how the game looks and controls, with some focusing on making the game more challenging by adding restrictions to the player, or buffing the enemies they'll face in various ways, while others make the game a bit more silly and strange, or give the player new buffs and abilities, similar to how some cheat codes worked in older games. The main takeaway regarding skulls from the roundtable is that there's going to be dozens of them in Campaign Evolved, the most that any Halo game has ever had to date, which should make for plenty of variety and replayability. For all you Lasso players out there though, yeah, good luck with this one. I can't even begin to imagine what that's going to look like, let alone how arduous it's going to be to complete. The other bit of info from the roundtable I thought was worth mentioning is in regards to the Flood, the other enemy force the player will face in the game alongside the Covenant. And now we really didn't get to see and hear too much about them, but much like how different weapons and vehicles from later games in the Halo series are being pulled into this remake, it seems like different Flood forms and their behaviors from Halo 2 and 3 will be present in Campaign Evolved, and in fact, they specifically teased a tank form Flood model on one of their development screens, which was originally from Halo 3. I'll be curious to see exactly how they handle the Flood in this remake, and I'm excited to see just how disgusting they end up looking, as weird as that may sound. It's been a long time since we've had the Flood in a mainline Halo game. I really want to see what modern rendering can do to these horrifying space zombie parasite monstrosities. There's a few more notable details to go over, mostly coming from a new blog post / Q&A, courtesy of Xbox Wire. They talk a bit more about the thought process and mentality behind not just rebuilding the original levels, but also expanding upon them where it makes sense to do so, citing the 4-player co-op support as a big reason behind this, and even talking a bit about a more specific example with a later, quite infamous level from the original game, the library. Quote, "We learned from Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary that there was still an appetite for things like better wayfinding, navigation, and diversity in enemy encounters. In the library specifically, which features several Flood encounters, we wanted to reevaluate the pacing and enhance the environmental storytelling. We've added new lines to Guilty Spark, which guide players through the level, and there's new dialogue that gives more insight into the narrative as it plays out." End quote. Now, given how the library was in the original game, I'm a bit surprised this little tidbit, or any mention of the library, wasn't included in the roundtable reveal, especially with them briefly talking about the Flood there. Regardless, it's nice to know right away that one of the more, we'll say, problematic levels of the original game is seemingly getting a lot of attention and care put into making it a more enjoyable and hopefully less repetitive experience than what it was in the original and anniversary editions of Combat Evolved. Another bit I found interesting from this Xbox Wire article was the info regarding the technical makeup of Campaign Evolved. We knew that Unreal Engine 5 would be the main driving force for any of Halo Studios' upcoming projects, ever since the New Dawn / Halo Studios rebranding video from last year. We didn't know that it would be used alongside legacy technology and code seemingly, if what's in this article is to be believed. It stated that new content made in UE5 is layered on top of code and systems from the original titles, which helps with maintaining a distinct Halo feel with regards to the moment-to-moment movement, gunplay, and so on. And now this isn't really discussed about in depth here, so it's hard to know exactly just how much of the original Combat Evolved or Combat Evolved Anniversary truly remains underneath all of the new stuff being brought in by Campaign Evolved, but it's no doubt an interesting facet of this remake project. It seems like an important thing to mention, especially for the longtime fans who may have certain ideas or preferences regarding how Combat Evolved should or needs to feel and play. So again, I have to wonder why this wasn't touched upon in the roundtable reveal. Anyways, that should just about do it for all the notable details and information we currently have about Halo Campaign Evolved right now. While I can kind of understand some people's confusion or disinterest in yet another release of Combat Evolved, I'm personally quite on board for it. The Halo series as a whole is one of my favorites in all of gaming, and Combat Evolved in particular ranks very highly on my own personal best games of all time list, as I'm sure it does for many others. It is an absolutely timeless experience, one that I've played countless times since I first had contact with it in the mid-2000s, and it's a game I'll continue to revisit over and over again for the rest of my life. So to get a new version of it that not only seemingly stays closer to the original artistic intent, something the 2011 remaster failed to do well in many areas, but also adds to that core original experience, with new weapons, skulls, mechanics, and even new missions to play. Honestly, if it were just the visuals and some mechanics that were being changed, that would still be enough for me. But considering everything else that's being brought in with this remake, I'm incredibly excited, and I cannot wait to get my hands on the game once it launches next year. Halo Campaign Evolved is looking like a great new start to the next chapter for Halo Studios and the franchise as a whole, and an amazing way to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the series. But with all that being said, I think that'll do it for this video. If you made it to the end, I thank you for watching. Your continued viewership and support is greatly appreciated. Hope I was able to entertain, inform, and perhaps get you excited, or even more excited, for this upcoming remake, one of the greatest games ever made. And last, but certainly not least, as always, I'll see you next time.